We are live.
Are we live?
First question answered.
We're killing it.
Yeah.
Welcome to Explain It to Me, the show where Ashton and guests explain things to Molly and me. We're talking about Loki again, the second episode, and we're joined today by Ken Plume returning to the show. Thanks for joining us, Ken.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me back.
You seemed very excited to join us for Loki. So are you a big Loki fan?
I don't know if anyone's a huge Loki fan from the comics. There's certain you touched upon this last week that he's more a catalyst than a character in the comics. So it's movie, yes, Hiddleston's Loki. I have been a fan increasingly over the years. So it's a joy to see it stretch and grow.
Great.
In the series. So yeah, happy to be back.
Have you enjoyed the series so far? We're only a third of the way through it, right? It's 6 episodes, right?
I think it's
I
a
think I
6
looked that
episode
up.
run. Enjoying it a great deal. I think it got off to a stronger start even than the last 2 Disney Plus Marvel shows. And I don't know if that was just dint of Hiddleston or the fact that it's sort of unburdened by a lot of the expectations going in, that now this is one that seems like it can just play. Like, I'm not concerned about the puzzle box aspect of it as much as WandaVision made you feel. It's not as grounded in heavy material as Falcon and Winter Soldier was. So this one just seems like this toy box of Marvel shows. It's the Mandalorian of Marvel shows.
Yeah, okay, that's a good way to put it, actually. Yeah, the toy box. Well, let's just start diving into the episode, because I remember I had to make sure I texted Ashton. I was like, have you seen Loki yet? And the second he said that he had, the biggest question that I had was that our Renaissance fair?
Yes,
because they filmed
was.
They filmed
Definitely.
it in Atlanta. And so, yeah, it opens up at a Ren fair, and I was like, oh my God.
I mean, as far as things that haven't changed since the 80s, I guess that's a pretty good choice.
Has any Ren Fair really updated past the 80s?
I think by definition they can't, because it's supposed to be the Renaissance.
But it's off the shelf 1980s version of medieval times.
It's like our Ren fair just got Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
How do they advertise that?
The guy with a trumpet standing on a box.
With
the old Cinnabon.
Wi-Fi password. But let's just go ahead and get the other one out of the way too. And this is a location that all of us know because we all go to Dragon Con. But the TVA, we saw it in the trailer, and if they finally showed it, the Marriott, that big like elevator shot that so many movies have used, but it's always exciting.
The Giger Marriott.
Yes.
It was really cool to see it like coming down, and then just to see like how much they did to the bottom, how much they edited in. It's like the Time Lords are there, and it's just like all this other stuff. And I was like, it'd be really cool if that's actually what the Marriott looked like.
Yeah, all the stormtroopers are missing.
We did also get the 10th floor spiral staircases too.
Yeah, I'm gonna grab an image of it for. Yeah, there we go. For people who have never been to Dragon Con, you guys can keep talking amongst yourselves while I do like this thing that I should have done
Alex
before.
is working furiously. We must listen.
It is a fascinating design of like an internal rib structure, is what it feels like. Like you're in the cavity of a whale, a giant futuristic space whale.
But yeah, that is literally just the Marriott in downtown Atlanta, where we spend every Labor Day weekend in costume partying.
But the statues need to be there next Dragon Con, right?
I would.
Oh, you know, someone's going to cosplay as those statues and just stand there like the whole weekend.
I expect next Dragon Con is going to be TVA Dragon Con. There's going to be so much TVA employee cosplay.
Oh, everybody's going to have those variant jackets.
It's so easy. Yeah, now I'm like, that would be fun to just like the first one, assuming it happens, to just everyone's like, it's like we're actually there.
And everyone's just carrying a handful of Infinity Stones, giving them out as party favors.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Can we make
Basically
hard
just
candy Infinity Stones?
Jolly Ranchers, yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
ultimate party favor. Walk away with an Infinity Stone.
Well, I guess I just want to, like, I'm going to go through some questions and stuff, but I figure the big one that I have, like, let's talk about the reveal at the end. Lady Loki, or is it Loki? Because I've seen,
Enchantress.
theories that it's not her.
Yeah.
But that's all. Molly always looks theories up and tells me, and I'm like,
I do not. I see them on Twitter.
That's a form of looking up. It's coming across.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People just
They're
post
thrown
about
at
it
you.
on Twitter, and I happen to see them, and I'm like, "Who's Enchantress?" And then I read their threads, and I'm like, "Oh, maybe that's her." I don't know.
Going back through, or even the first time watching it, I was like, I don't know that this person is acting like a Loki. I don't know. Sometimes they would, especially the mind-controlled ones, would do like a smile like Loki does, or there was a line where he was getting beat up and he said, I would never treat me like this. So I'm like, that could be some foreshadowing.
Well, also the way that the variant refers to Loki, like when they say like Loki, when they're talking to Loki, and like the way that they're like, oh, this isn't about you and things like that. I don't know. It just didn't seem like,
and don't call me that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it didn't seem like specifically that one too. Don't call me that. It didn't seem like a Loki talking to another Loki, kind of. But who knows?
Yeah, they Sylvie is what the name popped up as in the credits.
But Sylvie is also a reference which was credited in one of the credits for one of the foreign versions that scroll for 10 minutes at the end of Disney Plus. The character was listed as Sylvie, who was a version of the Enchantress that was created by Loki in the comics.
Mm-hmm.
So there's two versions. There's like the Asgardian version of the Enchantress, which is Amora, the Enchantress, who is like the official old school, goes back to the beginning of the comics as well, version of the Enchantress, who actually in the comics also created the Executioner, who we see in Thor Ragnarok.
And I think that Enchantress is the one that shows up in S.H.I.E.L.D. also.
It's her. I thought her sister shows up.
Okay,
her sister shows up. Yeah. It wasn't the Enchantress herself. It was her sister who showed up in S.H.I.E.L.D.
That's right.
But referenced the fact that she was the Enchantress's sister.
And what does the Enchantress do?
And snarls people's minds.
Yeah.
So very specifically, the sort of mind-altering possession kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Usually with a love angle to it.
Yeah, and Sylvie Lushton is the character's name. That's the second Enchantress that Loki creates. Actually, kind of resembles the character in the show, so that's also a thing. Just visually, she kind of looks more like Enchantress, or the second Enchantress, than she does Lady Loki. So,
and also to the bigger, what seems to be the overwhelming build towards an arc for this version, this phase of the Marvel Universe, was also a member of the Young Avengers.
That too.
Oh, really?
Ding, 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 ding,
as
ding.
we're adding more and more Young Avengers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Huh.
And then I think that she
coming up.
and then I think she ran into the actual Amora, the Enchantress, and got like banished to some other dimension or something.
Yes, she was not happy that her identity had been co-opted.
Mm-hmm.
But she also very specifically resents Loki for creating her when she finds out that she is a creation of Loki.
Yeah.
Huh.
That
Because
was
she
one
was
of his
originally
shapes.
just a human, I think.
Yeah, I think he specifically, just as a joke, decided, what if I gave these powers to a human? What would happen?
So do you think that she is like a variant of Loki, or is it someone else, the Enchantress, whoever, and they're kind of, it's another deception? The way that she was hiding in Apocalypses, she is also hiding, just like by putting on Loki costumes. They're like, oh, it's a Loki.
Could be. She also could be. There also still could be another variant Loki out there that's kind of pulling the strings with this.
That could have
Or it could-
created her the same way
Yeah.
that Loki in the comics created a functionary to go
Yeah.
off and do the dirty work.
Also, the costume that she's wearing is interesting too, because she's wearing the crown that she's wearing is from a comic book arc where Loki became the god of stories instead of the god of lies, which was a Lady Loki comic. So I mean, it could be that she's actually Loki, but it's it's probably a little too early to tell.
Also, I'm just terrified of what WandaVision should have taught us when it comes to speculation about any of these
True.
things. That what we
Yeah.
think is the obvious thing is not going to be. Sometimes they're not even thinking about these deep dives.
Yeah.
Sometimes they are.
Well, I think it
I've
kind of
learned to
makes
chill out.
sense. Yeah, what Daniel S said that it might be a merger of
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
he said that even higher that there was a file on her. So and Laufey daughter, right? Because Loki Laufey's son is his
Yeah.
full name, right? So that kind of makes sense.
But that's also believing in the infallibility of the TVA.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, and that's a great segue,
They
Ken.
think it's a Loki variant right now, so that's what they would probably call her.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, why don't we just keep talking about the TVA and what's going on with them? Because there's a really great scene with Mobius and Loki about like belief and whether or not the TVA or the timekeepers are even real. So what do you guys think?
And specifically to Ashton's point, in referencing that crown, what are the stories we choose to believe?
Mhm.
And who's telling those
Mm.
stories? So
That's
this
cool.
is all reference to the timekeepers being the ultimate judges, arbiters, and the ones who set forth what is the timeline? What is it supposed to be?
Hmm.
So
Mhm.
who is dictating these things?
Well, I'm definitely getting a vibe of kind of like Erin Kellyman. I can't remember her name, and Falcon and the Winter Soldier now, where she was an antagonist, but was also like you kind of get where she's coming from. You root for her a little bit, and I think we're probably going to see something similar with the Enchantress, where she's an antagonist, but also we've been talking about both of these episodes really like the TVA is fascist. So
Mhm.
Do you think this last episode had me thinking a lot more about the Wizard of Oz aspects of this story and looking at the TVA as the Emerald City and who is the wizard behind all this that's dictating these grand powers. Because Loki keeps pointing out, how much power do you have? Where is this power coming from? What is going on here?
Mhm.
That there's an internal belief system in the TVA as to what they're doing and who's dictating that. And I keep coming back to all the representations that we're seeing throughout of the timekeepers being a triumvirate and time being, a past, present, and future split, but also going back to Kang and Ashton, in the comics, the three aspects of Kang that are dominant, where you have the past version of Rama Tut, where he started, you have the present, which is Kang, and the future being Immortus.
Mhm.
And the central in the court scene, that's those representations, the representations. The middle one bears a striking resemblance to the actor who was cast to play Kang. But you notice that
person's been cast.
you noticed in the
character?
Yeah, because it's
Jonathan
Ant-Man
Majors,
is going to have Kang in it.
Which movie?
Ant-Man.
Ant-Man.
Oh.
So
that okay.
yeah,
I saw like a wild theory that the TVA might be in the quantum realm where time works differently, like Scott said. And that could be a way that, Kang, if he starts in this show, would be involved in Quantumania.
how do they explain it do you remember, Ash? I think it was like a null bubble of time or something where the TVA exists in the comics.
Yeah, and it's like outside the multiverse, sort of like the Beyonders and stuff. So,
But Immortus is the ruler, that aspect of Kang is the ruler of Limbo, which is a timeless, a place where time doesn't exist,
yeah, that's
essentially,
true.
as a force of nature. But what's interesting about those sculptures behind them in the court scene was you notice they have that dimensionality that splits the faces into the three segments that also has the delineation. I brought a visual representation.
Ooh.
If you look on the traditional comic representation of Kang, where it splits the face into three segments, watch where those lines of dimensionality fall on those representations in the courtroom scene of those three aspects of the timekeepers.
Mm-hmm.
Ah, interesting.
This is all going to be proven wrong in just a few short episodes.
Yeah,
so I'm getting it all out there.
It's
So we
still
seem
fun.
super clever.
All right. I mean, like, do you think that they do some of that stuff on purpose, even if it doesn't come
Without
out
a
to
doubt.
be true? Yeah, it's like they're still letting us have fun, and
Yeah. I mean, I still do think that I think it's pretty. I think that this whole thing about Kang being involved with the TVA though is more likely than all the Mephisto stuff with WandaVision. It lines up a little better, and we know that Kang is going to be in some future movies, so it's not
Sure.
like we're just pulling a character out of like the obscurity of comics and being like, they're introducing this this person. So
Mhm.
we
Also,
know
it's-
that he's
it's
coming
a deeper,
eventually.
weirder concept to try and introduce in a single film, as far as a multiverse and time and someone who's what are they trying to do? What is the goal of this? Thanos was just a guy chasing some stones through some movies for a singular goal. You're having to introduce the weird aspect of a multiverse and time to an audience.
Mhm.
So if a lot of these Marvel shows are now seeming like they're they're largely exposition. It seems
yeah,
like this is where we're going to set up all the concepts. This is where all the things where we can go in, we can breathe a little bit with these concepts, take the time to develop them. That way, the movies are just here's all the action that results from the things we set up.
I definitely see like hints of the Star Wars expanded universe, kind of, where it's like the books or the movies show off these really big events, and then sometimes the books will go in and dive into explanations for things that you didn't have to see in the movie, but like we nerds want to know. So yeah,
Right.
This seems like you can skip Loki, and when you get to Spider-Man 3 and you see all the different Spider-Man and Dr. Octopus is back and the Green Goblin, and it's like, okay, we get it, multiverse, but if you want to know how that actually happened, it's like we got that
Right.
in this episode, I think.
It's sort of like the High Republic, the way you've been describing those High Republic books for the new Star Wars line. That it's you have the core books. If you read
Mhm.
them, you're fine. You can get a gist of what it is. You understand. If you want to know more and flesh out everything and find out how things interrelate, you can read everything. We don't need to.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah, you
Sorry.
can read the comics and the young reader novels to like really flesh out the High Republic, but just the main ones.
So the Disney Plus shows are the really entertaining Wikipedia entries
Mhm.
for the MCU.
I kind of made the prediction last week, and I thought I was like so smart that I was like, oh, that this is going to end with the multiverse falling apart, and nope, it happened in the second episode.
Well,
So I'm like, all
that
right.
was one thing that I didn't catch when I watched it the first time. I went back and watched it this time and wrote down all of the locations that showed up on that TV
Oh boy.
Mhm.
when they were like saying where the bombs had gone. There's some pretty interesting ones in there. Like Ego is in there.
Oh really?
The car,
Titan, yeah, Titan,
Car,
which is
Titan.
like where Thanos is from.
Hala.
Vormir, where the Soul Stone is, where it's being guarded by Red Skull.
It's curious to see how many of those are locations where the Infinity Stones existed,
Mhm.
or specifically that are tied to major MCU events and characters.
Yeah, Xandar, Hala, which is like the Kree homeworld. There's
Also,
I mean,
what if you were just
Asgard.
trying to wipe out the Avengers through
Yeah.
time? How many of those are specifically not just the Avengers, but just all the heroes we saw featured in Infinity War and Endgame? If you were trying to wipe them out, how many of those locations that you just named would be if you wanted to wipe out Peter Quill, you'd take out Ego.
mhm.
You know,
So
that's where you'd
is-
snip that thread.
or like Gamora is probably the one for Titan in 1982.
And Titan also, if you're wiping out Thanos, is a major catalyst for the Avengers to coming together because he's the one who pushed Loki and gave him the Mind Stone and set him on the path to bring them together.
Mhm.
Which
Oh,
one
yeah,
was
there's a
the one
lot.
with the Kree? Would that be like
Captain
Uh,
Marvel,
Captain Marvel? Yeah.
One's in New York. Who's there?
well, Tony Stark could be New York.
I'm
I
joking.
saw a
Well,
theory
there's
about
literally
it's
everyone.
New
Yeah.
York, and it's specifically New York in 1947. So
Oh.
yeah,
yeah.
I did see a theory about that being when Cap when he went back to but I think they said it was that was 1948.
I wouldn't be surprised if 1947 was when they were able to finally retrieve the Tesseract from the crash site
Could be.
because it was underwater that the plane crashed, so that would have required a recovery effort post-war. So that's 1945. That's end of the war when First Avenger took place.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that is snipping off the recovery of the Tesseract.
So that's I didn't. Yeah. So Ash and I didn't catch any of that at first either. That all that list is where all of those reset bombs went.
Yeah.
And they all turned purple before they went.
So
what kind of magic
what do they
is
do?
purple?
Especially if there's only one of them. Like, what does that even do? And we don't really know.
So is that like the point of no return? Because we didn't actually see any of the timelines go beyond that red line, like they mentioned, but they were pretty quickly approaching it. So are we to assume that, that's it, multiverse created?
I don't know. I mean, this might just be, it might very well just be Loki or the Enchantress doing something to keep the TVA busy. You know, like make them send all their agents out to these, variant timelines to try to fix things, leave the TVA empty so that they can do something there.
Agent 20 very specifically said that she gave up the location of the timekeepers. The hostage
True.
agent very specifically said, I gave it up, or whatever her exact line was.
So, I mean, this could just be them giving, the TVA a wild goose chase while they go after the timekeepers.
Okay.
I do think that the show is going to establish the existence of the multiverse, whether it's by breaking what the TVA is doing or revealing that the TVA isn't really doing what they say they're doing in the first place. Because we do know, that there's Multiverse of Madness coming out. Like, we know that there's going to be
it's going to happen.
multiverse stuff. So,
but also it depends. This is where it starts getting this thing where you don't want to think about it too much. Where it's what is the definition of a multiverse and how is it different than other dimensions?
That's true.
Dormammu exists within a dimension. How is that not just an alternate version of the multiverse where he's able to be a force, or physics work differently, or whatever? Is it just multiverse is defined by a branching time stream within?
Yeah,
that's just all the heavy lifting that the show.
So it's like, are there like multiple time streams in each universe within a multiverse, or are those in themselves different, bits of the multiverse?
That is kind of, if you think about it, your nose starts to bleed. But like, is there one timeline for every dimension or universe? Because where are all these variants coming from if there is only,
and do they all have their own TVA?
Mm-hmm. Well, and also, like, why did they have all those examples of all those very different Lokis that caused them problems?
Which I do want to.
My brain hurt just reading it.
I do have all of these that we can go through later, just to see.
All the Loki
see
variants.
if there's anything fun that we missed in there. But
well, I wanted to pose a question. So the other analyst that the judge lady spoke
Ravonna.
about.
Yeah.
So my prediction with that, based on Mobius from the comics, is that he's kind of like an Agent Smith for the TVA, where there's like a bunch of him.
Yeah, because I saw a picture of him from the comics, and there's just like clones of him.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and
So I
they've had
think that-
different names as well. Like, wasn't there like Agent or Mr. Paradox and Mr. Ouroboros and
So I kind of think that maybe he doesn't know that, because like the TVA agents seem to be pretty like isolated, and they're like, oh, I've lived my whole life at this desk, basically, like that sort of stuff going on. And so maybe that's going to end up being a theme where it's like Mobius realizes that he's just a variant of this character that the TVA created, or this entity that the TVA created, and he actually has more in common with Loki than he thinks, and then ends up helping him with whatever he's trying to do.
That'd be a nice twist of the story, I think, because I saw some people saying that the other analyst was Kang, but I don't know.
I can't like. It's possible, but I just think it would be weird for them to introduce Kang as somebody that's like working for someone. Like he's not really usually into that sort of thing.
Yeah, just I think because he has a relationship with her somehow.
Yeah, well, and she's the only person who's claimed to meet the timekeepers so far.
True.
Also, so.
I actually pulled out from my collection the first appearance of Mobius.
Ooh, nice.
that I bought off a newsstand. So there you can see.
Oh wow!
Some aspects of Mobius based on we were talking in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, because a lot of those stories were also based on ones written by a writer named Mark Grunwald, writer and editor. Predominantly in the late 70s and 80s at Marvel, who a lot of aspects have been picked for the show so far, including the appearance. Oshkosh is where Mark Grunwald is from. That's where the Ren Fair takes place at the beginning. Mark Grunwald loved jet skis.
I love that joke that like jet skis are like the purest, best form of whatever. I forget what he said, but like
design and joy and
yeah.
Well, and it makes sense for someone like him who just like his all he's ever known is the TVA, and like the idea of like being able to drive around on your own little water jet ski, like.
Look,
of course he would love that.
What was it? Was it the roller skate or the ice skate? He was so jealous of that Ravonna got to keep in her office and he didn't, and the snow globe.
Mm-hmm.
So that definitely gave me a sense that like this series is going to end with him on a jet ski.
Oh yeah,
there's skiing off into the sunset.
Wilson on a jet ski is.
He'll be free from the TVA.
Is that when we finally get the oh wow?
Maybe
he'll be jet skiing off into the sunset, and you'll just hear oh wow. What do you think someone that works at the TVA could like leave it and live a normal life as a human, more or less? Or
maybe
this is one of those things where like you go into the TVA and you're like, why do they all look like humans? I mean, I know it's just for probably practical purposes.
Well, Miss Minutes does not look like a human.
It's true.
What is she?
Yeah.
She's Kang.
And we end up with another WandaVision bubble situation where we're like, oh, what happens if these people leave the bubble? Can they exist outside of the TVA for, extended periods of time? We don't really know.
I think if someone tried to leave, they would send the Minutemen after them to bring them back.
But let's say the TVA falls apart at the end of this season. Yeah. Could he just go out and live his life selling jet skis?
Oh, yeah.
Very specifically, he brought back the greater purpose line that was used to a great extent last episode, in that Mobius views what he's doing as a greater purpose.
Yeah.
So, there is a whole mythology that the people at the TVA have attached to what they're doing. I mean, it is, it's put out in that Brazil kind of fashion to be like the ultimate civil service that they're doing. They're working to make sure everything else works. They're doing all the hard, difficult work that it seems mundane, but this is why they do this mundane, dreary work, is because they know it's for this greater purpose to make sure everything else runs and everyone else can live their best jet ski life.
Yeah. Also, they're kind of like, like cogs in a clock, basically, where they were created for this purpose, and that's what they're doing, and they're just all parts of this machine, but they have their own personalities and stuff, and so that gets complicated.
or in cult-like fashion, they were all once variants, and much like Loki, were integrated into the machine, and this has become their purpose, and they've been there long enough, because who knows how time exists or doesn't exist there, as Mobius states, that you sort of lose track.
Yeah, he doesn't know how long he's been there.
And that's a good question for Loki. We kind of talked about it last week, but I don't know how this story ends for him, because doesn't he have to go back to his timeline that he left? Or, I mean,
he doesn't exist. I mean, that's been pruned, that variance in the timeline where he existed.
So, What
He
happens to
has
that
no
timeline?
home. He has nowhere to go back to. If he went back to whatever timeline exists per the TVA rules, there would already be a Loki there.
Mhm.
Or there wouldn't now, depending on when he dropped in. If it was past when that Loki died,
Well, the like timeline where Loki disappeared when the Tesseract fell out of the briefcase is a variant timeline that the TVA would have snipped.
Or
It's
as
not
they
the sacred
stated,
timeline.
it was already corrected when Captain America returned, when Steve Rogers returned the stones to their respective timelines. When he did that little mission at the end of
Yeah, maybe.
Endgame.
But then Loki would be missing though. So
Yeah,
then
that's
he
what I'm
wouldn't
saying.
be doing his Loki things.
Let's talk about jet skis.
So whenever you talk about time,
Go back
all
to
this
jet
time
skis.
stuff, it's like
Back
it
to
never
jet
works. You can't dig too deep into it. Which was true of Endgame as well, but this is just building off of that, and you're like, what?
Yeah. Why are they still playing a PlayStation 4 5 years later? Doesn't make sense.
Because you still can't get a PS5. I saw that joke online. But
well, Roombas still exist in what 2050 something, so I was happy to see that.
Here's a question. So Loki explained how some of his illusion magic stuff works. And based on the way that he explained it, does that mean that it's possible that like the Loki from the main MCU universe actually isn't dead because he could actually create a physically present illusion of himself for Thanos to kill?
But Thanos was already in possession of Infinity Stones.
So he probably would have seen through it.
It detracts from... And didn't he try the illusion? Didn't he try the illusion earlier in that scene before?
I think so.
Didn't he try and
talking about how he
distract?
has just illusions that you can just walk through, and then he's got illusions with physical substance.
But you make an interesting point in maybe why specifically we got the scene in this episode describing Loki's powers, none of which were mind control, which is what we see the Loki or the Enchantress using later in the episode was not a power that was described in the list of Loki powers, even by himself. And we've not seen previous to that either. The only way he was able to do mind control was with the stone in Avengers.
yeah,
that is not a Loki power.
He had power in space, not reality yet. I don't know.
It would kind of detract from the story they already told, though. And
I think
they're
this
right. The TVA file did say that he died,
makes sense. Yeah, like the if we're assuming they're correct about most of what their jobs are, that's where his file kind of just ends. So,
yeah, I think he's got to be dead at that point.
I think that this Loki might just go to the main timeline though, and like pick up where the other one left off, basically.
Or he just becomes the Doctor Who of the Marvel Universe. He stays at whatever the TVA becomes, and he's going off and doing time gags. Just
like it would allow him to still be agent of mischief.
Yeah,
he can pop up anytime and just do something crazy.
Maybe he eventually buys into the glorious purpose in maybe a corrected TVA of maybe trying to fix all of the issues that have sprung up because of the introduction of a multiverse and all of these problems.
I'm trying to think so a lot of the time when we see magic represented, it matches like it's Infinity Stone, and the Enchantress or Lady Loki, her magic was green, and I was like, is that just because Loki is... I mean, his magic has always been represented as green as well, like when he dried himself off.
Sometimes
I was
yellow.
I was wondering if she was using some sort of time-based magic, but that seems like a rabbit hole we shouldn't try to dissect.
We're assuming that all he did was dry himself off.
Yeah.
I loved that his explanation though. It's like, you guys are going to be squeaking around and super obvious, and here I am, nice and dry.
It's like a Category 7 hurricane is going on outside. There's incredible soundproofing in that Roxxcart.
Yeah.
Is that anything? That company, Roxxcart, or Roxxmart, or
Roxxon is a
Roxxon,
major corporation in the Marvel Universe. Sort of their Exxon. but more multinational and a lot more tendrils everywhere.
Was that mentioned in like a WandaVision commercial or
yes,
something?
Probably.
It was
I think
also in one of the movies. I can't remember which one.
But yeah, and like the guy that's the head of Roxxcart is kind of like a villainous, like corporate type, you know.
Sure.
Isn't he have a
naturally-
connection to Asgard now in
think
like
so.
the current continuity?
I think so, yeah.
So naturally, they make basically their version of a Costco.
Yeah, it's basically everything. It's like what was the name of the Martin Wally that destroyed everything?
There it is. It was in the first Iron Man movie.
I can't remember, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
I seem to remember there being
buy more or something.
I seem to remember there being
March?
something with Roxxcart and the King of the Trolls or something, like they're being connected somehow.
And Roxxcart also featured in Cloak and Dagger, another of the Marvel TV series that a lot of people didn't see. That I think was that the one that was on? Was that the Hulu series or Freeform? One of the two streaming services that no one really watched. It was a good series. It's a shame it was a little.
I remember the
exist in a
name.
pocket. But Roxxcart factored in really heavily, by and large.
By and large.
Was the Wally one.
That's right.
So Omega Mart, but hey, they built them strong. I mean, everything else was pretty much gone by then.
Well, I mean, it's about to be destroyed.
It's about to, but it lasted a fair while.
It was destroyed last.
Yeah,
It was interesting to see something like this in the Marvel universe, where this was just a natural disaster, probably because of like global warming, but it was just like a huge freaking hurricane.
but the irony of it is there were aliens. They were all over in time agents and all kinds of
Yeah.
stuff.
I want to go back to Mobius and Ravonna because there was a moment that I thought might be significant where they they stopped the scene to make him put a coaster down, and he's like, "Those rings were already here when I got here," and she was like, "Yeah, they're all from you." Something about that just seemed like, permanent stains on this coffee table or whatever. I'm like, it has to relate to the timeline and like permanent damage to it. And maybe Mobius has done something in the past to it, or
that he's in his own loop. I mean, Mobius, it's in there it's in the name, and the fact that he's obviously, probably needs to be told numerous times, put a coaster under that.
That's kind of what made me believe a little bit more the theory that there's multiple Mobiuses. Mobii?
Yeah, I mean, either that or it's a thing where he's just like constantly being like looped through time, so that there's like a bunch of him, but it is actually the same him.
I mean, maybe much like Loki, going back to that, where the TVA agents come from, there was a training process for him, much like they're trying to do with Loki to make him an agent. And that you see through those rings every time that he was in her office and going through the same loop to try and, because you've seen them use those devices to cycle people back just a few seconds in time to a position. Again, it goes into this whole timey-wimey aspect that is head-breaking if you really think about it. But yeah, to have that coaster moment, and there were quite a few rings on there.
Yeah.
So where did he discover his glorious purpose? And it being the TVA.
Or a jet ski.
Yeah. Maybe he was a jet ski salesman.
He does give off that like car salesman vibe.
A little bit.
I mean, we haven't even seen, like, it didn't seem like the guy that we saw disintegrated in the first episode in the, do you have your ticket scene? Didn't seem like
his deal was.
Didn't seem like he was a Loki level supervillain or guy with superpowers. Didn't even make reference to his dad about some mundane like stockbroker or important businessman or something like that.
Yeah.
Like where are these schmoes coming from?
Well, apparently you can be a variant just for being late to work or something. So,
and can it be canon that is actually Pillboy from The Good Place?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That is a
I love
TVA
seeing
agent.
him again. Yeah.
If he ever gets to go out and live in the real world, I can't wait for that spinoff show.
They both get jet skis.
Yeah, everyone gets a jet ski and a pet fish.
He gets to discover fish in the ocean as they're riding their jet skis.
Yeah, this show does give off, or the TVA gives off kind of a good place vibe, especially when they go to the medium place and everyone is just like in an office wearing beige. And why is their office so old? Like when the Nexus events were happening, someone like frantically started rotary dialing on a phone. It was like, what? Where's your technology from?
And did the TVA make him grow that mustache?
Yeah. They're going to extreme extents to like give off this vintage like 70s kind of vibe.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
I like it. I think it's cool. But yeah, I don't know that there's really a particular reason for that. It's just
that's an aesthetic tailor-made to sap your will.
Yeah.
I mean, if you really want to just knock out any desire to or motivation or energy to rebel against anything, that'll drain it all away. I mean, make you a drone. I mean, the TVA in the comics, all of the employees were faceless. They were all so they didn't even have identities themselves. They had less of an identity than the clones of Mark Grunwald that were populating it, who were the middle managers. The actual drones were just faceless people just working away at a sea of desks into infinity.
Like
apparently there's a nightmare department out there somewhere too.
Uh-huh.
Oh yeah. Like the lady in charge of the files, like she was not going to look up until Loki hit that bell and she's like, what?
What is it about librarians in films? Because who was the one in Attack of the Clones? She was testy too, as a librarian. Yeah. Why are they ever as helpful? Librarians are very helpful and very nice. Why are they always represented as persnickety and like, you need help?
Yeah. If it's not in the archive, it doesn't exist.
Parks and Recreation too. Everyone hates libraries.
Yeah.
They're great.
Where do we think Loki's going? Because at the end of the episode, I guess he's running after Lady Loki.
Well, I think I spotted a scene in the trailer that is where he's going. I don't know if you want me to say, because is that like spoilers or
trailer speculation?
Yeah.
Okay, well, there's a scene in the trailer where Loki, like, clearly has just popped out of a portal or something because he like falls on the ground and then gets up, and he's wearing like the shirt and stuff that I think he was wearing when he went through the portal, and it looks like he's in like an apocalyptic, like he's in a field that's looking out at an apocalyptic, like ruined city.
So hiding in apocalypse.
Yeah, like, and then there's also a scene that looks like it's Enchantress facing away from the camera that's like looking at just like space and stuff exploding, and there's like pipes and it's like a dump or something. I don't know, like I feel like maybe like the actual hideout that Lady Loki or Enchantress or whoever this is using is basically like the end of time, because that's like the ultimate can't make any variants here, sort of thing.
It's a great restaurant.
So
well, Asgard was also on that list of places.
2004 Asgard.
And they very specifically had a moment of Loki reflecting on the ultimate destruction in deciding that was where the hiding places would be. And
in the trailer, again, while we're on the topic of scenes from the trailer, there is a scene in the trailer very quick of Heimdall fighting somebody.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I guess he's in this show at some point.
Bring him back. I liked him.
Yeah.
Find a way to keep like some of these people alive. And that's the complete opposite thing that I've ever said for a Star Wars.
Bring him back.
You die, you should be dead. And here I'm like, yeah, bring Heimdall back. Cool.
Yeah. Let's go back to Alex's Palpatine rule.
Yeah. Somehow Heimdall returned. Awesome.
On just like a side comics note, which I hope is a precursor to it. When they were in the tent, before they got to when they had the fight scene in the tent, when the agents get ambushed, Holding Out for a Hero, which plays during that, was the campaign song for when Loki ran for president in Vote Loki in that series, written by Chris Hastings.
I forgot about that.
Ooh.
That was his campaign song. And we do see that Vote Loki suit in the trailer. Is
Yeah.
something that may be coming.
President Loki.
Now,
So-
do you think
We know we have
Is that-
his campaign song.
is that a
licensed.
variant or is it Loki, like our Loki, the show Loki?
I wouldn't be surprised if it's show Loki. I don't know
Yeah.
how many. I think the big bait and switch of this show might be we're not going to see variants of
Mhm.
Loki in the series. That it's set up to be the obvious thing. Maybe we won't.
Yeah.
So what do you think his motivation is right now?
I mean, he's free right now.
Yeah, he's wherever that time door took him.
He's not
Right.
under the TVA's thumb at this point. So does he lean into Loki tendencies and decide to have some fun with whatever's going on? But also, the one frustrating thing that I'm sure that I thought was the takeaway line from this was, I had even wrote it down. If you don't trust me, you can trust one thing. I love to be right.
Mm.
And he wasn't at the end. And I wonder how frustrating it's going to be. And knowing that there is a more powerful force out there
Yeah.
right now has got to frustrate him, who's more clever than he is. I mean, that whole scene at the end was showing you're not as clever as you think,
Right.
Loki.
And his mind has already been blown with the idea that Infinity Stones don't mean anything in the TVA, and just like, yeah.
Do we think he palmed one of them?
I
Yeah,
thought
I asked about
maybe.
that
last
week.
week.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think maybe. It was a green one was the one that he picked up, so that was the time stone for MCU. Who knows? Maybe.
Could
So-
he use it now that he's somewhere else? Like if he did have one of those in his pocket?
I think
I
so.
would assume so. Well, do you think he would be okay, like going back to outside of the TVA, just the real world? Is he okay ruling somewhere like that?
Oh, knowing.
if he knowing that he's not number one, that he can't go there's still something higher than him, or would he want to rule the TVA?
I think, well, I mean, this is, if we're going back to where in the timeline this Loki is, this is still the Loki of Avengers that just came off of his brief taste of ruling in the first Thor film. And so he didn't get the experience of being Odin and having plays performed about him
I'm getting
for a
bored.
while. Yeah, and getting bored with, eating all his grapes and nuts in Asgard because that's their candy.
Candy, yeah.
But he did watch the video, so
Yeah.
maybe he learned a lesson. I don't know.
This is true. He could have used it if he had one of the stones. He could have used it in this, but I think at the time, you're right. He was trying to prove that he was right about what he thought was going on.
Yeah, I mean,
And he couldn't even talk his way out of it.
That's assuming that those are even legitimate Infinity Stones. I mean, we really don't know what we can trust with the TVA.
They may just be paperweights.
Well, we got a Streamlabs. Thanks so much, Jed. Says in the comics, Kang is trying to conquer everything. So is the TVA the way he would do it, and the TVA people are the way he controls it?
I mean, if you're looking at the villain's belief that they know the right way, the sort of also the way they handled Thanos and his philosophy, then I could certainly see a villain saying, this is the proper timeline. This is how the timeline should be. And I'm the one who dictates this. And I'm going to prune off all the variations from that because they don't fit what my preconception is. So I can see that as a version of achieving his control of time, is dictating how that goes. And having essentially this cult force of people that he's kept imprisoned at the TVA and stolen from time. Because it wasn't that an aspect of Kang in the comics, it went like the Ravonna aspect in the comics, that she was, I think, the princess of a world that he had conquered as Kang the Conqueror. and that he fell in love with, and actually I think his people revolted against him because he tried to save her at one point and displayed weakness in having affection for her. But still, she's the only one who's seen, if we believe everything that's been said, seen the timekeepers in this and know what's behind the curtain, if that's the case.
So is Kang maybe going to be the new Thanos, like the big bad that we build to an Infinity Endgame level?
I mean, Doctor Strange is Multiverse by its title, and then if you're not introducing Kang in a big Avengers movie, but you're dealing with the quantum verse in Ant-Man. I mean, where do you go? Where do you go from obliterating half of the known universe with Thanos?
Yeah.
There's only so many different dimensions and aspects of reality that you can tinker with on an Avengers level scale, and time seems to be the one that you would go to.
Mm-hmm.
It's also if they are going to be introducing the Fantastic Four soon, it's a sort of classic villain for the Fantastic Four to try to deal with.
Quite literally, based on his history.
Mm-hmm. So, that would be kind of a fun one, because it's a like very, we need really smart people to come up with a smart solution for this really complicated situation.
Well, do we think we're going to do something like Infinity War and Endgame again, where they build to like these Avengers movies and have like one big villain that we build to over Avengers, 5, 6, and then like beat him in 7 and 8?
Maybe. I mean, if we do, I think it's going to be, I don't think it's going to be Kang, because they've already started. I think they've already, like, the fact that we know that Kang's going to be an Ant-Man, and this show seems to be heading in a direction that might include Kang, I think that to me makes me think that he's not going to be like a big bad, years and years down the line sort of villain. Because like with Thanos, they barely hinted at, like they hinted at him and it was clear like, oh, Thanos, this is a big deal. But it was always like one scene at the end of the, like
right.
Clearly this is going to be a long-term thing.
But the way to look at the development of the MCU was all of those independent films we saw, like Iron Man and Thor and Captain America, all building to the Avengers, has now been replaced by the existence of these Disney Plus shows. All those movies existed to be able to create the characters and backstory that you'd need to get in Avengers. Now maybe what it is, the tentpole features that we see, like Captain Marvel 2 or Guardians of the Galaxy 3, when things get to a theatrical level, those are the big event movies now. Because all the other water carrying and building, the universe building, is being carried out by the Disney Plus shows now, the way that the independent character films used to be in building the MCU before the presence of Disney Plus.
I think that's a great point, because we already know like Doctor Strange 2 is going to have Wanda in it. And it's kind of like, they all might be something
and Spider-Man.
Yeah. Spider-Man's going to be in Doctor Strange too.
Mm-hmm.
He's already,
he's in some of the posters and things.
But like, I think they'll all be kind of like Thor Ragnarok, at least, where it's like, it's not a Thor movie necessarily. It's Thor and the Hulk. That I think that's a great idea, actually, to just.
Well, they've almost kind of like broken the mold that they were having to work with to begin with, because movies worked a certain way, and so now they can
where the character rights existed.
Like they couldn't make a Incredible Hulk movie, for example. Well, who cares now? Like they can just call it
Hulk's in 7 films right now. So.
And
that's
so,
why
like,
we're getting She-Hulk.
They've gotten to the same point that we've talked about with the Mandalorian show, where it's like, oh, they did season 2 of the Mandalorian, and are they going to do a season 3? Maybe eventually, but they don't really have to, because it's like Disney doesn't feel like they have to lean on the name value of their IPs now. They can just be like, okay, well, that character's going and doing something else now in a show that's called something else, and people will watch it because it's on Disney Plus and they already are watching it. They don't really have to worry quite so much about calling it like WandaVision 2 just to get people to watch.
Right.
They can be like, well, we're not going to call it WandaVision because it doesn't make any sense for it to be called that. But Wanda's going to show up in more stuff because her story's not done.
And Captain America Civil War is the one that I think basically broke the mold. I mean, that's Avengers 3 for all intents and purposes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I think that they, like, traditionally you wouldn't have a whole ton of side characters in a movie because you don't want to divide focus from whoever the titular character was that you were selling the movie under. But I think Marvel sees that it's all interconnected. If it's all interconnected, this character can show up there. They can pal around. We can have the Guardians for however long they're going to be in Thor: Love and Thunder, and it's fine because you rolled off the last movie. I think they're really viewing it as this huge tapestry, and it doesn't matter what the title says. It doesn't matter what character's named in the title. They're all there. They're all in the universe, and no one's going to go, well, wait a minute. I timed it, and the title character was only in it for this many minutes, and I want my money back.
And the beauty of it is that, like, what better way to do it than with comic book movies? Like, comic books have always been like that, you know, where you've got characters dropping in and out of each other's comic books all the time, and that's part of the fun of it, you know?
Yeah.
And it spreads the risk.
Yeah. Plus, we're getting that What If series, which literally could be about anything.
I mean, the What If series could be entirely about these variant timelines.
Yeah. It's I wonder if they're actually going to be canon in a way. It's like, yeah, no, they did happen in other universes instead of just an actual what if.
Whoever runs the Marvel Wikipedia page is going like, oh my God.
Wikipedia has it so easy.
Brett Baumler sent in 2 questions. Thanks, Brett. There's a young actor named Jack Veal cast for the show. He resembles a young Loki. So my theory is he'll be playing Kid Loki, who later becomes a member of the Young Avengers. And also says, my theory on Sylvie, she doesn't want to control the TVA. She wants to destroy it. She wants to free the timeline from them. She renamed herself Sylvie as a way to take control of her own identity and reject the TVA's narrative of Loki's life.
We'll see.
I like the idea of
Kid Loki would be interesting because he's like a really important character in Loki's character arc in the comics. Because effectively the original Loki, who was just a villainous jerk, dies, and then Kid Loki gets basically is sort of like a reincarnation of that original life force character sort of thing, but he's like a good guy. And he just wants to like look out for his brother, and like, you know, he wants to protect Asgard and stuff, and so he's a good guy. And then I think he ends up having to sacrifice himself or something, and then you end up with a more Tom Hiddleston-esque Loki that's like a fusion of Kid Loki and the original Loki. If that's probably an oversimplification of what happens in the comics. It's been a while since I read those. But
I just had a thought, and this is probably the weirdest thought I've had in this conversation about time travel. If we're talking about, you were mentioning Sylvie and her possible motivations through all this. What if this is a direct tie-in to the Mobius scene in The Office, and that they've gone down this path before with a Loki? That's why all those rings exist. And in that sort of Groundhog Day fashion, this is the first time Mobius has put a coaster underneath his drink, breaking, like, this is going to be the loop that goes different with this Loki, with the Loki now that they've got. Because he talks about the fact they knew it was a variant Loki, they knew all these things, that this is going to be now where it diverges into a different outcome than it has been. And that's why all those rings exist, because there's been that many loops. And because, you know, it exists out of time or whatever, and Ravonna varies, you know, that would also tie into maybe the fact that her reference to another analyst is a cheeky reference. It's you. You're the other analyst. You failed. You know, this has been a failure again and again in this thing. But this is, that coaster is the sort of key to all of this.
It's all about
I
the coasters.
That. It sounds hard to explain in the show, but I think that's a cool idea.
A friend of mine was watching it going, oh, the first episode was all exposition, but they went super hard sci-fi in the second episode. You know, this one has really leaned into all the weird concepts. Like, this seems like the litmus test for how far can we push the weirdness of concepts, just general sci-fi concepts. Will the audience follow along with all of this time weirdness? and variance and how the time stream works and what affects it and who cares.
Also,
As long as
just
Miss Minutes is there to explain it to us, I'm
Yeah,
fine.
there we go.
Yeah.
Also,
I checked
one
out
thing-
5 minutes ago.
one thing that I know that I just thought of that I meant to mention this earlier, but on the topic of when you were asking about did Loki palm that Infinity Stone, another thing that he might have taken is what's her name, the agent that was with him. They specifically said something about her keeping a hold of her time collar or whatever, and then we didn't really see her use it at all. So that line, and again, now that we're getting into like Mephisto territory of like every line has to be important and leading to
Yeah.
something.
It's the
But,
coaster and the jet ski. That's all that's important this entire show.
Well, wasn't the collar from? I thought that was a reference to the last week when Loki got a collar on her.
Oh yeah, I mean it was definitely a reference to that. But them mentioning that she had that, it made me think like maybe Loki took it with him, or something. And
She also had his daggers. Maybe he got a hold of those.
could be, or did she put those in the locker? I can't
think she
remember.
She put
hers
those in
Oh.
her locker.
Okay.
Mobius
That's-
had him in his locker, and she grabbed him out of Loki's hands and put it in her locker as she was getting ready to leave.
Yeah. Those would have been hard to like keep somewhere on your person without.
Yeah, there are
harming
not deep
yourself.
pockets in that windbreaker that he was wearing.
Well, we've been going for an hour, but before we wrap up, I did want to just run through the variants of Lokis that we did see and just see if there were any
that's
Easter eggs to be
his
pulled out.
His frost giant skin, his real
Yeah.
Mhm.
skin, right?
How about this one?
He's got the Tour de France.
He's a winner.
Yeah. Good for him.
These just make me think of like, oh, you're playing Loki? Buy some loot boxes. Get these costumes.
Yeah, get these Loki skins.
Yeah, do you want to play Fortnite with Loki?
Now, is this like, did he win the actual Tour de France, or is this like an Asgard version, or what?
Yes, it's the Tour de Asgard.
Oh, they actually get to race on the Rainbow Road.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Oh,
Right off
just
the
like
side.
Mario Kart.
And that was
Oh,
a troll.
Super.
Okay, that's
buff.
what that is. Buff
Mhm.
Loki.
Yeah, that's kind of how the trolls look in the comics. And Thor and Loki, there's often trolls involved in their stories. And it's another one of the 9 realms.
I do like how it's a straight head swap on the troll Loki, though.
Yeah.
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 Just his head put on it. Like that does
The
not look like
horns
the
look real,
trolls'
though.
heads look. It's just
Little
his eyes.
tiny pinhead.
Yeah.
I
I
like
don't know
this
what
one.
the
'cause-
deal is with that one.
It's
So-
like
So
he
that's
has
sort of like,
real horns.
yeah, that feels like it's closer to the stained glass that we saw,
Oh
Uh-huh.
yeah.
like a more sort of traditional Mephisto, sort of devil interpretation of
Uh-huh.
like a satyr kind of Loki.
Yeah.
And then I think this is the last one. That's, I would assume, more like a traditional Viking Loki look.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the skin that when you go, will you just give me the regular Loki skin? Can they just make that available in game? Just
I'm
the
guessing,
one we know.
I'm guessing that one's probably like the old school Viking Loki, which reminds me of there was a story in the comics where Loki from that time period was sent by Odin to basically just ruin Thor's relationship with his girlfriend because he was getting distracted from being an Asgardian and was getting too involved with Earthlings.
Nice.
I think the one last thing that I had written down to mention, because I saw people talking about it, is that if the multiverse was created in this episode, it happened on 6/16, June 16th, which I thought that was fun.
That's why they moved it to Wednesdays.
Right.
They knew
All
too
for
late.
that.
Yeah. It wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
None of this surprises me anymore. But now everyone, I hope, goes and listens to Holding Out for a Hero while riding a
Oh,
jet
man.
ski.
That's on
That
my
song's
workout
been in
mix.
like everything lately. It was that and the He-Man trailer, and there was something else that it was in within the last like week.
You know that the showrunner of Loki, when that He-Man trailer dropped, was like, really?
Yeah,
Where are episodes in like
come on.
2
Dang it.
days?
That happens weirdly all the time. Like, there a couple of years ago, Country Roads was in like 3 movies that came out in the same couple months.
It's
and
the
Yeah.
Salisbury Hill
Fallout
effect.
76.
But that's it for my notes. Does anyone have anything they wanted to bring up before we sign off?
Oh yeah, the chat. It was the Guardians of the Galaxy game trailer
Oh.
had that song in it.
I mean, it is a banger. That's, I agree.
It was like that exact version of the song too, with like that speed.
I did want to say, I hope we never get to the point of the apocalypse where we lose all the swallows. That
How
was
do you
like,
hide in that apocalypse?
yeah, that just sounds sad.
Mhm.
The extinction of the swallow. Dang.
I do want to wonder. I wonder what like the weirdest apocalypse is in those files.
Well, maybe we'll get them in the What If series.
Yeah.
It's the chicken finger shortage.
Yeah.
Well, I think. Oh no, Ashton.
Oh yeah.
How would you survive? I think we'll wrap it up there. So, Ken, where can everyone find you and follow you online?
At Ken Plume on Twitter, Ken Plume on Instagram. KenPlume.com has links to everything. Bit of a Chat is the main podcast. I also produce We Got This, that Alex and Molly have been a guest on 2 episodes, highly contentious episodes, and a quiz in which Hal still has not forgiven me for putting him through that. Yeah, all that stuff. And some books. The Go Team Venture, the Art of the Venture Brothers book I wrote, and another book should be announced shortly. And yeah, all that stuff.
Awesome.
Cool.
Ashton?
I'm on Twitch at Yeti Boatman, where I stream most weeks on Wednesday and then sometimes other days.
Molly?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Molly Damon, Instagram at Molly Mander. And I was trying to pull up a link to later today, if you follow the Schmodown, or if you don't, because it's not really a Schmodown related show. But once a month, me and Jill, from a certain point of view, do our show called Happy Hour, and we have guests on, and we have a designated cocktail, and we just get drunk and chit chat because we miss our friends. And this past year and a half has been hard. But put a link to that in the chat. That's at 8 p.m. Eastern tonight, and our guest is going to be Robert Parker from the Schmodown.
Ooh. I'm going to start a show called Designated Cocktail.
I think most people here already follow us over on Star Wars Explained, where we talk about Star Wars. And in 52 minutes, I will be hanging out with our friends, the Blunder Dome, on Twitch. So we'll be doing some gaming tonight. But yeah, that's it from us. Thank you, everyone, for hanging out and talking Loki with us, and Kang, and jet skis, and coasters. We'll be back probably Thursday again next week. We just had some scheduling this week that made us not able to do it on Thursday. But yeah, we'll see you all next time.
Bye.